Hello, everyone. Welcome to Novel Hour Live. This is our lunchtime show that we do every Thursday, 12 noon Eastern Time, 12 noon New York time, depending where you are in the world. Today, we're going to be talking about some badass women in history, okay? You're going to get some historical fiction. You're going to get some historical romance. You're even going to get some cozy mysteries, okay? All of these books feature women at the center, which I think, why not? But also we're doing this in celebration of Women's History Month. We also just had Women's Day the other day. So if you're looking to add some books to your reading list, this is definitely the episode for you. Also, we have some historical drama as well. So stay tuned to the end because we'll be talking about just historical romance specifically, but also a little drama that was involved in that topic. Also, we're going to go live on Substack. So join us after this over on Substack. You can click the link in the video's description. Once you find one of us, you'll find all of us and tune in there. But I think that's it for the housekeeping. We're going to jump straight into the books. I will be sharing some historical fiction first. We're also then going to have Laura with the mysteries, and then Francesca is going to give us some romance. Okay, so I'm really excited to share some stories about women who changed history. So in honor of Women's History Month, I'm sharing 3 books by women about women, and they all celebrate the strength, the resilience, and just groundbreaking achievements of all these historical heroines. So the first book I'm going to share with you is an Ariel Lawhon book, and it's entitled The Frozen River. Now, in this one, you're going to step back into the 1700s. It's set in an early American town where there is a man accused of R-ing someone. Now, this man turns up dead, and it plunges the entire community into chaos. Now, here's a fun fact. This book is inspired by the true diaries of a midwife. Her name is Martha. This is set in a town in Maine. And when we meet her, we really discover just how much of a fierce and determined woman she is. She's also a woman of integrity. She has an impeccable record. And then she's thrown in the heart of this whole scandal. Now, she has seen lots of things throughout her time. And her taking a stand on this controversial case was very, very profound, very not common for a woman of that time. So we see her navigating the courtroom drama. There's some societal clashes and biases. And of course, just seeking the truth about one, who killed this person, what happened to this other person, and all of that. So it's kind of like a historical mystery in a way. There's lots of suspense and emotional intensity as well. I want you to just expect a book that is a real page turner. I think this one was an absolute winner. You get the courtroom drama, you get the historical detail, but also the personal courage of our main character, Martha. It's like Martha's journey is just one of defiance in a way. Again, we're going back to the 1700s. So just seeing her being this very determined woman, it makes for a really compelling read. So if you're looking for, true historical fiction with lots of heart, I think this one is definitely for you. The second book I'd like to share with you is Becoming Madam Secretary by Stephanie Dre. Now, this one has, again, another determined woman at the center, because determined women are the centerfold of all the books I'm sharing with you today. Now, this woman shattered every glass ceiling that was in her way. But the thing she's most known for is that she was the first woman to serve in the US cabinet. Now, this is historical fiction. So this is a fictional biography of this woman. But like most of the material in the book about her life is true, but the areas where you don't have that clarity, that's where fiction comes in. I also interviewed this author on the pod, so you can get more insight into this. But let me tell you about Frances. Now, Frances, this is set in the early 1900s. So book 1 was 1700s, now we're in the 1900s. This is set in New York City, and we meet this woman who, by the way, has a master's degree, which is wild for the early 1900s. She's studying childhood malnutrition as a part of her master's thesis. And, she's discovering a lot of things, and she becomes very passionate about not just children rights, but also workers' rights as well, because she's discovering multiple layers of things as she's doing her studies. Now, she takes a job with, I guess, what would be or Consumer Protections Bureau for back in the day. And while in this job, she actually meets who will become the future president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Now, it's interesting when these two meet, just because their political ideals are just kind of like opposite. So, of course, there is some respect, but they're clashing with, their ideas of the way they think things should be. Now, anyway, her personal life, she falls in love with this economist, which is also very important because, marrying a man who also is an expert in his field, handling a woman at that time who's also an expert in her field, who's very educated and just very passionate about her work, it was a very interesting match. However, her husband, unfortunately, is living with depression, and he has like some manic episodes along the way. That is enough in terms of personal life that I'm going to give you, because I really don't want to spoil it. But essentially, we see her, right, postmasters, working at the Consumer Protections Board for that time, and then her moving up through the ranks to become the Secretary of Labor. So that was very, very interesting. Also, her role is part of the reason why we have Social Security today in America, because she helped to push through the Social Security Act of 1935. So that is a very important part in history. But what I love most about this book is that it didn't just focus on her professional rise. We also see her struggles as a person. So we see her personal side as well. We see what her marriage was like, trying to care for her husband and be there for him. Also, like wanting to be a mom and just, navigating all of those things. So essentially, we get both the personal and the professional triumphs, but also challenges of this woman. I think this is required reading, honestly, just for anyone who is inspired by women who have reshaped history against all odds. And the last book I'm going to share with you, my third book, is Finding Margaret Fuller. Now, Finding Margaret Fuller is by Alison Pataki. I also have an interview for this one on the podcast as well. Now, in case you're not familiar, Margaret Fuller is a 19th century woman. She's a feminist, trailblazer, and she actually inspired, mentored, or was probably the muse for some of our favorite writers in classic literature and so on. Now, anyway, this one is taking us back to Concord, Massachusetts. This is around 1830 something, 1840 something, and we meet Margaret when she's a young 20 something. She is very well educated for a woman of that time, and we see her really define social norms by connecting with all these big literary giants. So when I said she probably had a hand or a touch or something to do with literary giants that we know, for example, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Nathaniel Hawthorne, and just lots of these influential figures. I mean, there's even something with the Alcotts in there, all right? So anyway, she is admired by these people, but also she's struggling with her own challenges, right? She has loneliness. She also has some financial hardships. But even though she's working at this magazine, with all these literary peoples, which was entitled, I think it was The Dial back then, she also became the first female foreign correspondent for the New York Tribune, right? First female foreign correspondent. So we see her journey taking her away from America and over to Italy. So she traveled through New England, but then she ended up in Italy. And we see her even covering like their fight for independence over there during that time, and just kind of wanting to get away from their existing regime. We also see her getting involved with someone over there and all kinds of things. Now, we see a woman essentially who is ahead of her time, a tad bit earnest sometimes, if I'm going to be honest. However, she's very, very resilient. We see what happens to her in the end. I don't want to spoil that for you. But essentially, it was very refreshing to just see a woman who had a voice at the time when obviously society was dominated by men. So yes, those are my books. Again, I just think there's so many wonderful books out there about women in history. So if you are interested in bravery and the resilience and the power and just all the things women did to change the world, I think these 3 books are for you. So from a midwife to someone who became the first female cabinet member to also someone who influenced a lot of our literary faves. It's just really interesting to kind of see women at the forefront. But of course, I want to hear from the women in my life and my co-hosts on what they thought about my books.
I'm so excited to read Becoming Madam Secretary because I have really enjoyed Stephanie Dray before. And I should actually mention that you could just dive into all of Stephanie Dray's backlist if you like this topic, because like you can read America's First Daughter and My Dear Hamilton that she co-wrote with Laura Camoy, or even she has a series, I think it's Cleopatra's Daughter trilogy. So it's like, there's a lot for you to like dig into with this author. So it's like excellent recommendation.
And I kept hearing about Frozen River, and I'm like, oh, this is what it's all about. It's just, I kept hearing, I was like, what is this Frozen River? And I'm like, oh, it's at a main courtroom drama. I am here for it.
You would appreciate the courtroom drama for sure. Yeah. It's lots of fun. But if you're just joining us, welcome. We are talking about women in history. I just shared my historical fiction selections. You share your recommendations in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Also, just want to take this opportunity to shout out Brown Girl Reading. Hey, Dee, that's my friend. So share your thoughts, your recommendations in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Again, it's not just about the books we're sharing. You know, we want to hear what you're reading and some of your favorites as well. Okay, so Laura is going to share some historical mysteries. So let me get off here.
So I'm excited to share. As always, I share some cozy mysteries or cozy romances, but today I got some historical mysteries. They're a little bit cozy, but not as cozy as what I normally share. They're more in the historical area, but we got some actually badass women's actually solving mysteries. So the first one we're going to talk about is the art of French murder. So this is Julia Child plays a role. So this is post-World War II Paris, where Julia Child is attending Cordon Bleu, and her bestie is like, she doesn't know how to cook, and she's like living it up with Julia's new adventures, and they find murders happening, and they're actually saying that Julia actually did it, and she's like, no, she did not kill this guy. So her bestie is solving the murders, and it's a fabulous series. There's different murders, there's different people, intrigues, and everything, but it's just like fabulous to be in Paris post-war. This beautiful, just getting to know this OG cooking influencer, because Megan, Ina, Martha, you know, they're because of Julia. Julia was the OG cooking influencer who taught us how to cook the French cooking. So this series, there's 3 books in the series. There's one new book coming out, I think, this month. So this series is great on audio. So yeah, that's the Mastering the Art of French Murder. We're going to move on to the Veronica Speedwell series, which is the first book, is A Curious Beginning by Deanna Rayburn. This is a fabulous series to go for badass women. So Veronica is basically, she's a spinster. She is a researcher. She's a naturalist. She wants to go on expeditions. She wants to travel, and she wants to explore. And somehow, like, she is being, people are following her, and people have something to say. There's something about Veronica that we do not know as a reader, and she doesn't even know about it, but people are looking for her. And so her aunts basically died, and she's about to leave them, and she's about to leave town and go to her expedition. And this mysterious guy comes in and is like, no, we need to protect you. And somehow the guy dies, and he leaves her with this other guy. It's a lot of guys. And he is actually another naturalist, who would research her, and he's right now doing taxidermy. So he's actually creating like a lot of animals in taxidermy, and they have to figure out who killed the other guy and why they're following Veronica. And it's a delightful audio. Like, I really love the romance that was going on. There's like a blooming romance happening, but I love Veronica's like determination to just like tried to make her name of her own, and like she did not get hung up with like people beliefs and mindset. She was like, no, we're gonna do this. And yes, people were trying to murder her, but she was like, no, we're just gonna be figured out. So Veronica is delightful. There's actually a scene where they go to a circus, and she has to pretend that she is a circus act as they were going incognito and trying to hide from the people. So yeah, this is the first book in the series. There's about 8 books in the series. I think Deanna is still writing in the series, so there's still more books, but she actually has, if you want a contemporary, she has former granny serial killers who are trying to trying to actually get out of it from them being killed. So that's I think it's a contemporary series that just came out this year. There's 2 books in that series. So if you're looking for historical mysteries, Veronica Speedwell is great. If you're looking for contemporary, she has a contemporary series with all the characters. So that's A Curious Beginning by Deanna Rayburn. If you have Audible, the Audible Plus actually has most of the audios included in the program, so you can listen to them for free. All right, the next one that I want to share is the Lady Sherlock series by Sherry Thomas. So this is actually, if Victoria has not read the series, I think you'll enjoy it. So it is a retelling of Sherlock Holmes. It's a long-running series. We start with A Study in Scarlet Woman, because to Sherlock Holmes' first book is A Study in Scarlet, and so is gender bending. So if Sherlock Holmes was Charlotte Holmes, we get to see this retelling from her as a woman in this time period where it's not acceptable to take orders or take observations from a woman. And so we get to hear Charlotte Holmes pretending to be Sherlock. In this first installment, there's three deaths that happen, and they're accusing her family, her dad and her sister about it, and she has to solve them. But she also wants to live on her own. She doesn't want to marry any guy, and she doesn't want to deal with any of this stuff. So we do have Mrs. Watson. We got the side characters that are known for the Sherlock Holmes series. We got the villains and everything. It's great. It's a delightful. It starts slow at the beginning, but it picks up. So if you DNF'd it early on, I would say just listen to it at a quicker speed, and then once you get into the story, it's delightful, and each installment gets better and better and better. This is A Study in Scarlet Woman by Sherry Thomas. It's a delightful series, and I think she's still writing the series, so there's still more books. So that's it.
I think you know me well, because you said Sherlock Holmes, but it's now a woman, and I'm like, okay, yes, that sounds like me for sure.
I co-signed that series because I love it. So highly recommend. It's probably one of my favorite historical mystery series.
Ooh.
Yeah. It is delightful. Sherry writes actually great historical romance, but she's been writing this historical mystery series, and she knows she's a fan of Sherlock Holmes, so she actually has those Easter eggs from the original or the OG tracks, but in the sensibility of if a woman was doing this, what are the needs? Which is it actually brings it to the table. I'm like, I like this better than Sherlock Holmes, because I'm like, I don't care about the men. I want to know what the woman is doing.
Oh my gosh. I actually think on television there is a adaptation called Watson. I think it's on one of the networks, whether it's ABC, CBS, I don't know which one. But it is a retelling, but they have Morris Chestnut acting in that one. So there's that. Okay, so Dee Dee shared some recommendations. Dee Dee shared The Personal Librarian. That one is a good historical fiction book about women. That is Victoria, I forgot the middle name, Murray or something like that. So I'm familiar with that one. That one is good as well. But she's currently reading The Voting Shed Murder by Paula Sutton. Oh, what do you think? I want to read that one. Paula Sutton, just in case you all don't know, she's an English influencer. But I love that she's influencing later in life. She had a whole career working in fashion and magazines and stuff like that. And then her and her husband bought a country home. They left London, and I think they're on the east coast of England somewhere. I don't remember where her town is. But anyway, she's now writing Cozy Mystery, and people know her for her garden shed. So it's called The Potting Shed Murder. I know that's a typo. Yes, The Potting Shed Murder. It just clicked. But she's a gardener, and I'm very interested in that mystery. And Dee Dee says, I love Paula Sutton. Yes, She's amazing.
Oh my God. I am downloading this because you have me at credit for English and murder.
No, she is like living that life. Like, again, she was a city gal in London, had her children, her husband also, you know, like they're career people, but then they're like, okay, time for us to go to the country. And they legit bought an old English home. Like, Dee said it. Dee said she's like the modern day Miss Marple. Like, okay, I am sold. I knew. Okay, I probably order it from Blackwell's too because I love her. Like she influences me. You know what I mean? She comes out in her pretty frocks and she bakes her cakes and she's refurbishing her home. She thrifts. Can I tell you something? She thrifts as well. So she's not like the gal who's going to the store buying a whole bunch of new things. And I think she got some show on BBC or something because my mom was telling me about her too, where they go like antique trail kind of things and like they look at antique things that people have or something like that. Americans have a version of it. It's like I can't remember, I'm drawing a blank, but before I digress and go off the woods, Dee is also reading Notre Dame de Paris and Northwoods. Okay, but she says about the Miss Marple, the Paula Sutton book, the main character of the book who is sleuthing and is like Paula Sutton. Okay, this is interesting. So I am sold. Thank you, Dee, for the recommendation and kind of bringing it to my forefront. Because again, I do follow Paula. So I'm very, very interested. Okay, let's get to Francesca, who's sharing historical romance.
Yes. So I'm going to be talking about historical romances, but I'm moving away from like the Victorian or Regency ballrooms. And I do have one book set in England, but no ballrooms here. So I wanted to feature books that actually had either were inspired by women in history or a period of time where women kind of like were a little bit more distinguished and not focused necessarily on England, because I feel like in historical romance, that's what it's everywhere. So the first book that I am going to talk about is the England book. So it's Hello Stranger by Lisa Kleypas. Now this book features the heroine is Dr. Garrett Gibson, who is the only female physician in England. So she's tough, she's brilliant, but she's also had to claw her way into this male-dominated field because it's not for women, as per the times. And she's definitely not interested in love or romance because she knows that she's not going to be taken seriously if there's anything that kind of like makes her seen as more of a woman. But then she meets Ethan Ransom, who is a former Scotland Yard detective and kind of turned spy. So he's been fascinated with her and he's kind of watching over her, making sure nothing happens to her. And then she gets threatened, he gets involved. And what I really, really loved about it is the fact that he is not just obsessed with her, but like really respects her and everything that she stands for. So now Dr. Garrett's character is actually inspired by a real person. So Dr. Elizabeth Garrett Anderson, who was the first woman to qualify as a physician and surgeon in Britain. This was in the 1800s when becoming a female doctor was unheard of, but she basically fought her way into the profession and paved the way for women in medicine. So Hello Stranger really delivers all of that and gives us all of the Easter eggs of actual history. I also had seen a lot when this book came out, had seen a lot of the author talking about the research that went into it and how, you know, she really tried to include certain aspects and certain things that really happen in real life and include those as scenes or points in the story. So it's really, really fascinating book. And I think we can all love to read about a woman, a heroine who breaks barriers, but also the hero, because this is a romance, actually truly respects her. So really love that one. The second book, we're going to move into the American Civil War, and it's An Extraordinary Union by Alyssa Cole. So this book follows Elle Burns, our heroine. She's a former slave with a photographic memory, which is a very important resource for the Union. So she volunteers as a Union spy. And basically she has to go undercover in the South, disguised as an enslaved woman, even after being freed. And she works in a Confederate household to gather information for the Union Army. And while she's there, she meets Malcolm, who was a Pinkerton detective that also was working undercover as a Confederate soldier. So both of them are spies. And the two of them end up kind of having to work this dangerous mission together. And lots of tension. I mean, you have two people that for many, many reasons should not get involved because obviously they're both doing a duty and a job and they have to keep their cover. But even as what society can see, they should not be even involved because one's a Confederate soldier, one's an enslaved woman. So from anywhere you look at it, it's kind of forbidden to have their relationship. But it's a great, great story. It's a great romance, lots of tension. And also Elle's character is inspired by lots of real life Black women who basically were spies for the Union here in America. And one in particular was Mary Bowser, who infiltrated the Confederate White House and passed along crucial information to the Union and basically disguise herself as an illiterate servant. So it's kind of like the story that we're getting in this book. So I think it took so much bravery to do these kinds of things, and An Extraordinary Union really captured that. It captured the high stakes and the intensity of that situation and of that bravery. And we're seeing that actually from both of the main characters. So I think that they really worked really well together. And also, I think there was a relationship of just admiration and trust between them because they were both fighting for a greater cause and a common goal. So really loved this one. If you love historical romance with a bit of espionage, but like true real life heroism, I think this is a great one to pick up. And then the last one, for something completely different, is The Lotus Palace by Jeannie Lin. This is set in Tang Dynasty China, and our heroine Yu Ying is a former courtesan's maid that finds herself caught up in the middle of a murder investigation alongside our hero Bai, who is a charming and careless scholar. The two of them have to team up to uncover the truth about this murder, and along the way they realize that there's more beneath the surface, as well as growing feelings for each other. But now, while our heroine in this one is not necessarily inspired by a specific figure in history, the story is very much inspired by women from the Tang Dynasty. And back then, courtesans weren't just entertainers. They were actually highly educated in poetry and music, in conversation, and many of them actually had more influence than noble women. So I feel like there's so many instances of poets in that time who started off actually as courtesans and then became very influential in the period of time. And also something to note is that the Tang Dynasty was one of the most progressive periods for women in China, even though also it was a world and a time where the status could be lost in an instant with anything that happened. And that tension is something that we see in The Lotus Palace, which is so fascinating. It's a great slow burn romance. It's a very atmospheric and immersive historical backdrop, which I think that Ginny Lin does really well. She has this series plus another series that's also set in Tang Dynasty China. And I think that you're really going to feel that there's all of the societal stakes in the love story and in the mystery as well. So another one that if you want a little bit of mystery, you're going to get that there. So those are my recommendations.
That last one sounds really, really good. I'm just saying, it sounds really good.
Yeah, I love courtesan. I love reading about courtesans and the influence and the level. Because I love women in history, like, and how badass women actually can make a difference. And I love the amount of power that they had, and they yelled at and make women, make men just banging their knees, and then she's like, I got the power here. So it's a pretty fascinating, and not everything was S work. It was, there was a lot of like education and places were influential.
100%,
so,
yes. I love that as well. Hi, everyone. If you're just joining us, welcome. We are talking about women in history. We just got done sharing our book recommendations. So again, if you're just joining us, don't worry. Just slide the dial on back, hit replay, because we shared some historical fiction books. Those are the ones I shared. Laura shared some mysteries, so historical mysteries with women sleuths at the center. And Francesca just shared some historical romances. So lots of great book recommendations for you to get into to celebrate Women's History Month. But of course, you need to be reading women all year long. We're just saying. We are just saying. But anyways, before we hop off here and head over to Substack, so if you haven't already, now is a great time to click the link in the video's description, follow and subscribe to us over on Substack. You find one of us, you'll find all of us, because we are recommending each other. There's that recommended feature. So you'll find all our other Substacks as well. So you'll find all three of us. So we're going live over there. So do that now if you're not subscribed already. But before we head over there, so see, I'm giving you time, we're going to talk about some little historical drama. Okay, very fitting. Francesca just finished talking about historical fiction romances. So let me get that graphic up real quick. Hold on. Okay, so we're going to talk about the drama as it relates to this particular article. It's entitled Historical Romance in Peril, Voices from the Industry. So this was published, and the backstory about this is that the author of this Substack, okay, let me get that Substack up there. The Substack is Romance & Co. The author of the Substack wanted to crowdsource authors in the genre just to kind of share their opinions on the industry, because the subtitle of this is 9 historical romance authors share their publishing experiences, insights on the current market, and expectations for the future. Sounds really good and promising, right? I agree. I mean, it sounds great. It's definitely a topic worth discussing. We 3 actually discussed about historical romances not receiving a lot of contracts. We're going to, kind of revisit that. Francesca, I hope you will. But this is where the problem kind of started. So on Threads, because we want to give credit where credit is due, deep.read.bell posted a screenshot on Threads of one of the author's submissions to the previous Substack that I just described. Now, the person wrote, the author is Caitlin Regal, and this was their submission to the newsletter. Absolutely, every single literary agent I have seen, even for the historical romance genre, has expected to see diversity and inclusion. I am all for proper representation of all peoples, but historical authors have the added restriction in the need for historical accuracy. My book includes diversity in an appropriate manner for the time period, including a Jamaican chef and Caribbean natives being attacked and enslaved by pirates. My main character frees these people from their captors. This level of representation was as far as I was able to go within the period specific limitations, It seems unfair to authors to be demanded to include things that may not fit our stories. The last thing we wish to do is misrepresent groups of people because we are expected to gratuitously include them. I'm gonna get into that in a second, especially because this Jamaican has opinions. Okay.
Oh my God.
Before we get to that, because we tried to come with proper reporting. Of course, it was making the rounds on Threads. Author Sarah McLean, who also is in that genre, also commented and said, okay, what we're not going to do is talk about accurate historical representation as gratuitous. Read a history book before you write a historical, damn it. But again, because we want to keep things accurate, I will say the author of the publication, the original publication, they removed the author's section, so that section that we quoted, but then they also gave a statement because again, look, they removed it, the screenshots are there and the receipts. So they decided we're going to make a statement. So this is the statement. Hello, everyone. I want to take a moment to address an author's statement in this newsletter that has since been removed. First off, I am genuinely sorry. The author shared views on diversity in historical romance that I strongly disagree with. I struggled with whether to include that part of the interview because it conflicted with my own beliefs. However, I wasn't sure how much to editorialize or edit their words. In the end, I let it stand as is. And looking back, that was the wrong choice. I truly appreciate everyone who took the time to share thoughtful comments and concerns. I should have recognized that there was no reason to platform or promote these viewpoints, and I regret that I did. I'm grateful for this community and I will do better. Moving forward, I will be more mindful about how I present different perspectives, especially when they have the potential to exclude or diminish voices that deserve to be heard. Thanks for sticking with me, and I appreciate the important conversations this has sparked. Best, Julia. Listen, I ain't even going to say anything. Francesca, save the people from my rants. What are your thoughts on this?
Where do you even start with this? Okay, let's start with historical accuracy. You can write anything. Like, people are out here writing vampires. Come on now. Don't come with, oh, the literary agent cannot tell me because it's not historical. One thing. Second, what are you talking about historical accuracy? Because there's nowhere in the world that did not center Black people in history. That's the only thing that existed. That is ridiculous. That is completely.
Listen, Black people have been saving themselves for a really long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So go read
All
a book
over the world. Come on now.
In the words of Brown Girl Reading, she needs to read Black and she also needs to read British. All right, definitely out here saving themselves. So the fact that she is also unaware, and I love how she made the Jamaican and the Caribbean references. Okay, there's your token Jamaican and your token Caribbean. I'm gonna tell you right now, there's so many rebellions that happened on these islands, okay? The next time you go to a hotel, just try and see if you can get an excursion done and go to these places, and the peoples will tell you the history, the real history. So the fact that she's saying like only this other random could come in and save these people. Listen, people be saving themselves. Go read a book. Nanny of the Maroons in Jamaica. Listen, these people escaped and they were living in the mountains, okay? Not every narrative is white-centered or from a certain perspective. But Laura, what did you think?
I think obviously we have issues with our education system. Like the idea, like everything's like the winners wrote the history books. Like there's actually other people talking about different things and other experiences that were lived. Like it's not just white people. History is the only one that matters, but it shows your bigotry. It shows your ignorance, and it shows the sense of like, well, that's how it only works. Obviously, like you're only showing one slice of the pie. That's a minimum slice of the pie. That's not even that interesting. Let's talk about that. Like there's obviously we should not defund the Department of Education. We should educate people. It's not again, this is probably a lady who thought DAI is not for her, but yeah, it is for you. You're a woman. Yes.
I'm also just going to interject and say real quick, I'm going to give, because you all know me, I'm always going to give people the benefit of the doubt. Clearly, this was written from a point of ignorance. I'm not going to go on a limb and say she knew all this stuff, but she chose otherwise. I think this is why it's important to legit go read a book, but also read real historical accounts. Seek out historical accounts that are outside of what is prescribed for you. Because I'm gonna tell you this, okay? I went to school in an English school system. I cannot vouch for what it was like going through an American school system, and I can't rely on kids to kind of give me the feedback because I never lived it, you know what I mean? So it's not my experience. But my family made it a priority to provide other material, okay? I recognize traveling is a privilege, not everybody can do it, but it's like, for example, we were just sharing some historical fiction books. My take is I always would get super annoyed when World War II, which, was the biggest conflict in the past 100 years, it would always reflect like European points of view, right? Like, or American point of view, or very other few. I love seeing now that we're getting how people were living during the war. That wasn't like, on the European mainland or, Americans going over there or anything else like that. Does that make sense? Like, we need the point, because other people were existing during this time. And then the last thing I'm gonna say on this is, and this is something a lot of people are not familiar with, but let your token girl give you some history. Not all Black people were enslaved.
Yeah.
Okay, not all of them. Right. So there's also that different point of view as well. So I'm just like, lady, read a book. Fran, I remember you were sharing earlier about, well, not earlier, in a previous video about historical romance. Like, what is the state of historical romance as well? Because I think that was the original thing, the original intent, and I do want to give voice to that, the original intent of the author of this newsletter.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, historical romance has been kind of on a decline for the past decade, I would say. And especially right now, publishers are not giving contracts, even for authors that are generally, or that would generally do well in the genre. So I totally get her point with wanting to put that out there. I am also myself trying to always work on pushing out some historical romance. I think the market has moved to whoever wants to continue writing historical romance has been kind of pushed up, forced into indie and self-publishing because the marketing dollars are not there, the contracts are not there. I would even say even the ones that are getting the contracts are not getting any marketing. Like, publishers are out here not pushing historical at all. I think that has to do also with the fact that they thought that because of the Bridgerton effect, everything would just like sell automatically, and that did not happen. But that's never going to happen unless you work on it. Like with anything, everything requires marketing, and they just don't put the marketing there. I think that also reflects back to Book Talk and the fact that Book Talk doesn't read too much historical. I think that again goes to marketing. I think if you start pushing some historical romance on those Book Talk influencers from a publisher's perspective, they may like it. Like, they have expensive backlists, start sending them some books and they may actually be talking about it. But they always want to push the same things, and then they wonder why nobody's buying this other thing. Well, because you're not promoting it. So I think it falls on those indie authors and us to talk about the genre and try to get it out there. I've kind of already seen this happen with paranormal romance, and it's getting a little bit of a resurgence in a very weird kind of way, different amalgamation of it. But I think it's just that the publishers make the executive decision that this genre is dead, and they just stop buying, period. And it will probably go through a period of time where there is no traditionally published, or very little traditionally published, historical romance, but that just means that those stories will start to thrive in the indie market. So
it's not absolutely. And go ahead, Mark.
I think the other part is that the publishing is focusing on Regency, a little bit Victorian, England, and it's like there's so much more history. Like, we can have Egyptians, we can have Asian, Genie Lin, like we can have a thriving Chinese Tang dynasty and all the different dynasties that happen, and they're just focusing on ballrooms and merch mart and the whatever almanac. Like, we need to go like actually look for other things, other places of history, other non-white voices of history. Like, wouldn't it be great to have like BIPOC voices of history? Like, let's talk about their romance. Let's talk about joy. Let's talk about the good stuff that happened. The other part is that book buyers are not buying mass market paperback, which is where most of the romance were sent over because it was cheaper. Our grandmothers, our mothers bought these in the grocery store, and they were cheap and they were just easy to consume. And so we have moved away from mass market paperbacks. They're not buying it. They're not putting them on. And so we have to move to trade paperback, which means it's much more expensive. And so they're actually making those decisions like, well, we're not doing this as a mass market. We're actually doing this. And we have to justify the cost of the paper and the cost of the marketing for it. So what's getting published is the historical rom-com, which are the cutesy illustrated covers. They're rom-com-y, so it's kind of like a crossover from the reader into this place. So this is what they're looking for. But we're looking for the angst. We're looking for the place of like actually like just choose a cheer record, like give us like the whole story.
Yeah, absolutely. Heading over to the comments. If you are watching us live, let us know your thoughts in the comments. Okay, we don't bite. And replay crew, we haven't forgotten about you. If you're watching the replay, share your thoughts in the comments as well. So Dee Dee is co-signing what I was saying. Like, listen, not all Black people were slaves. And clearly, I mean, US history, lack of education, I mean,
Fund Department of Education. We need fund the schools. Like, I don't mind my tax dollars. I don't have a child, but my tax dollars are going to go towards
We need
schools.
that.
We need to fund.
We do need it.
Also, Didi trolling me. Listen, when I get angry, nobody knows who the hell I am. Okay, the accent comes out. But also, Didi's asking a proper question. Who would you all recommend besides Beverly Jenkins as it relates to historical romance?
I would say check out Vanessa Riley, JJ McAvoy, Liana de la Rosa, who, I mean, those are set in England, but they feature Mexican heroines. So I think that those are a very interesting take. And I mean, those are coming out with the pretty trade that we were just talking about, trade size, but you know, all the other ones you can probably find with the regular mass market. Vanessa Riley has written extensively. So yeah, I think that there's definitely variety of settings, diversity in characters. So yeah, I would check out those. JJ McAvoy has a series that I would say is quite similar to Bridgerton. So if you're looking for that kind of still ballrooms, but with diverse characters, also another one that's really good and likes to write diverse characters and settings and like interesting characters as well in like what they do is Courtney Milan. So I would also check that out.
And if you want some Caribbean, Indian, you know, Emily Howard has quite a few series. Some of them are based on issues, but you know, I think it's we get some of the Korean influence there.
Awesome. Well, if you're just joining us live, we would love to hear your historical recommendations, preferably books that center women, written by women, because we think there are lots of options out there. We shared historical fiction books, historical romances, historical mysteries as well. And then we also got into a little bit of drama. So just hit that replay, watch the replay so you can get all caught up. We hope you will join us next week. Let me see what's on the calendar. Okay, so again, you can watch last week's live because we shared books set in Ireland. We just had St. Paddy's Day on Monday. Okay, so if you still are feeling the Irish luck, let's watch that video, get some recommendations. We just shared women in history. Next week, we're going to share some books that center trans joy. We hope you'll join us. Again, we gather here every Thursday at 12 noon Eastern time. On Thursday, I said Thursday, yes, 12 noon Eastern time, 12 noon New York time. We hope you'll join us next week. We also had a gossip session this week, so go back and watch. We had emergency gossip yesterday. Oh yes. Breaking news. We had an emergency gossip session where we were talking about Tory Woods. Okay, we presented all the facts in a similar way. We presented the facts with today's gossip, which is essentially, look, this is what it is. This is what people are saying. And then these are all thoughts. So we did that with Tory Woods. So you can find out more about her book. I will just end by saying the things people are doing online are wild. We were thinking about doing a follow-up, but I'm like, no, we're not going to contribute to that chatter because that is getting into people's personal lives, and I have thoughts on that. But anyway, maybe we can talk about it on Substack Live. So head over there now. But we had that emergency live, and then before that, we had a whole bunch of other gossip, which I think I got rid of that index card, so I can't recap it for you. But tune into that one over there. We talked about lots of things. So we're heading on over to Substack now. Thank you so much for watching, and join us next week. Bye.
Bye.